This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting-edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa Linton here, and you're here on the Whole Horse Podcast. And today on the podcast, I have Sharon Wilsie, author of HorseSpeak, and her co-founder, Laura Wilsie. And I'm really happy to have you both here today. Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you for having us.
Yeah, it's so great to have you. So Sharon, I saw through Fair to the Horse, I saw one of your webinars, actually a few of them. And I was totally blown away by the work that you were doing, the clarity of what you were bringing to the table in terms of horse personalities and reading body language and just like understanding our herds in a different way and our horses in a different way. And after I saw that, I was like, yes, I really would love to have you on the podcast. I'm so grateful that you've decided to come on today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun and happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'd love to just start with I don't know a ton about your story and how this work came to be. So if you could just start by sharing a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners are maybe new to your work as well. So
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So basically, I was working in two specialty fields. On one hand, I was teaching an equine assisted learning program at a local New England college that specializes for students with learning disabilities. So that was a really passion project for me. And I also was on the sideline. I was working for New England horse rescues. So there were several in the New England area. There was one really big one out in New Hampshire. And both of those situations required that I go deeper and deeper into not only, helping like at the rescues, not only helping horses, get over trauma or, become reintegrated with more of a normal life, get rehomed, find a new forever home, hopefully. But I'm also working with at-risk youth, or in the case of the college, I was working with people who maybe didn't have basic body language skills if they were on the autism spectrum or they had NVLD. So in both those situations, I needed to be able to create really deep, very fast rapport between humans and horses. And, when I'm at a rescue, I'm not the only one there. There's usually the dozens of volunteers.
Totally.
I did a lot of volunteer training programs. And in that situation, you have people with, years and years of horse experience and some with absolutely none. And in the therapeutic world, I had some students with years of horse experience and some with none. And yet in both environments, I needed this to be really successful for the integration between people and horses. So in order to facilitate something like that, and to get it quick and to work with people who maybe have never handled, there's a lot of systems out there and some of them are really pretty interesting and can be really useful. And you've got everything from special whips and halters to clicker training to, there's all kinds of things. But what I found was there needed to be something that was really uniform across the board that had to do with simple approaches and awareness of things like how many eye blinks are you doing? What kind of breath message are you giving? Or something as simple as how are you standing? Are you standing with your belly button facing or away? And that could make the difference between a horse feeling calm and trusting in your presence or not. So eventually I took time off from both of those jobs to study horses exclusively. And I took the vein of an ethological approach where I really just wanted to understand them for what and who they were, not for myself as a trainer, not for, I kind of shelved all that stuff and just said, okay, got my own herd of horses. I lived with them for a year.
Wow.
And I just said, can I figure out how they're communicating with each other? Because I felt like there was, as with all the work I had done and as exciting and passionate as it was, there was more questions than there were answers. And so really that was the birth of HorseSpeak. And from there, you know, Laura and I came in contact with each other from one of the rescues. She rescued a baby horse. And then we worked together to get this book going. The rest is history.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing, amazing. And when was the book published?
In October, it came out October of 2016.
Sweet.
We have been working together for 11 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And Laura, is this a sort of a passion project for you as well?
Well, I had grown up around horses.
Yeah.
For generations, my family always had horses, saddlebreds. My grandparents got into thoroughbred racing, but they were always at a distance because I was told they were dangerous. The thoroughbreds are very high energy, and the horses they had at home, all my pony rides ended up with me on the ground. And so even my riding lessons at a different facility, I was on the ground. And so I ended up, having the misty morning at like 4 a.m. and being out at the track and just like, just feeling like I wanted to exercise. Of course, I mean, I'm like 12 years old, so I had no concept of what was actually happening within the field of racing. But it was just that feeling of like, wow, this is so cool and all that. And for probably like 15 years, horses were not involved in my life at all. And someone had taken me to the rescue, and I was just hanging out, feeding and helping out with all the different horses. And then I had met Sharon, and she luckily was able to help me with my filly, who was perfect little angel until she turned 2. I had adopted her when she was like 8 months old, and we had great rapport, and she was so much fun, and everything was really kosher. And then she stopped walking with me, and I was like, okay, this is a roadblock here, and I did not want to do anything that didn't feel good inside my body to have this horse go with me. I didn't want to make her do it. I know must have been a better way to help us like get this horse to move rather than having her. I would take her pen mate out because it was an enclosed environment, so the horses could be loose. And I would take her pen mate out and walk her, and Jag would follow, and we would go through the whole entire farm. And that's how I would end up spending time with her, walking and having enrichment, was by having her follow her leader. So but then I'm like, Sharon, can you please help me? And we worked on a couple skills, and it was just, And we have had such great success just being able to, feel fortunate to have really only learned from Sharon because of the horsemanship. It's body language, regardless of whatever modality you're working with. You get these, you practice. It's like I used to play basketball. So it's like you practice shooting, you practice dribbling. It's the same thing, undoing muscle memory.
Ooh, it's very hard.
Yes. And a lot of the folks we meet are adult learners. So then it's like many, many years of undoing these rote skills that you have. So that's where, but HorseSpeak can actually, it's not a training method, but it's a system of understanding the horse's communication, but then the precision of what our body language can be doing. So how your shoulders are, where your belly button's pointed, are you an X posture, which is, kind of shoulders back, or are you more of an O posture, which is, more of a little bit of slouch in your shoulders. So just even knowing that distinction about yourself can actually change a lot of things when you're working with the horses.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. And I recognize even the other day I was out working with one of my mares, and they can be a little bit like slower. They're both draft crosses, kind of, and I realized how much I was doing
Like I was like listening to myself and going, Alexa, you're like clicking away, and there's all these things happening. Like I was getting more and more kind of like erratic with my aids, and realizing this must be so annoying for her to have to like, what is she even doing over there? Doing all these things. So so I'm really excited to hear more about this sense of really like honing in, clarifying, because I'm guessing a part of what you see is that people are doing too much.
Well, people are doing usually what they've been taught to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And in some ways, I have a real simplification for where we are today, and that's where we were in the past was horses were transportation. Period. The end.
Yep.
We use them to plow. We use them for war. We use them. So training methods were based on making them a serviceable animal, and they weren't designed to encourage relationship. If relationship happened, great. That was a plus, but it was not required. And now we're in an era where we don't need them for work. We don't need them for transportation. And we have them because we like them. So now training methods that are based on dominance, control, obedience, do not help us develop the kind of relationship that we're really seeking. And there's certainly a place for having 51% of the relationship. You have to have 51% of the
I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
Because they're big, and but the biggest thing about horses that I learned from studying them is that leader horses are the calmest ones. So a true leader is calm. A lot of people will say, well, I have a real alpha horse because it bites everyone. That's not the alpha horse. That's the omega horse. That's usually the horse that's really insecure. And certainly they can drive everyone away, and they can, but
they can move feet for sure.
They can move feet, but horses who are leaders choose more often than not to move feet.
Yep.
And that's the distinction. And when I realized, because at the rescues, for instance, there'd be, an old wise mentor that had laminitis or something. So they left him loose all the time because moving around is better than being stalled. And I would watch this old horse make the rounds. And at one of the rescues, there was a room for 100 horses. And so this old guy would make the rounds all day long. And wherever he went, he would leave the edge of that paddock, and the horses inside that paddock on the other side of the fence would be calm and peaceful. So I said, I need to be watching what this old guy's doing, because it looks like he's just standing around trying not to fall over. Like that's what it looks like to me. But actually, when I started studying him, I realized the eye blinking, the breathing, 1 foot up, 1 foot down, a tiny nod of the head, a little what did he pay attention to? What was his intention? Oh, now he turned his flank. Oh, now he turned his hip. Every single thing that he did was a communication, and he would aim his communication usually at the weakest one, and all the other horses would get out of the way so the weakest one could have that. And the other horses would then come in and copy what the old man had said. And I would see them doing the same communications with that weaker horse after he left. It's like he gave advice. Wow. So when I realized I could teach this, this is learnable. This is human level participation, because we need to go really slow. Right? Because we get lost really fast. Like you said, you're out in totally. And you're like, I'm lost.
Completely. And my horse is going, oh God, I'm sure. Like you need to tone it down,
Yeah, slow down. And so because they do low calorie conversation, and 90% of their conversation is low calorie, because of that, it's an enormous advantage, because you can get in there and get so much accomplished and on the low calorie side of communication. So when it does come to faster communication, where we like to be cantering and going over a jump, that's a really fast conversation.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or some people want to do liberty work, or whatever it is you want to do, but usually it involves movement. When horses are spending their day, we say, oh, they're just eating hay, they're just standing there, they're just grazing. This moment you say just anything is the moment you missed it, because that's when they're having all their conversations. So realizing that you can step in to the river of communication that's always flowing between them, and build yourself a little boat and figure out how to navigate that river, instead of saying to the horse, get out of your river, come into my world and listen to me. It becomes much more of a shared experience. And that's when horses then say, you know what, I can't wait to follow you.
Yeah. Yeah. I really see that, I love that idea of low calorie, because I think, I'm a pretty fiery human, so I don't tend to do a ton that's, that way, but I have the part of me that's like, I call the lazy part of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that, but it's the part of me that sort of understands the sense of like, I don't want to be spending so much energy on this. And so it sounds like that sense for most horses, from what I've seen of your work, is like they don't actually want to be expending a huge amount of energy.
Right.
It's not.
It's also, yeah, and it's completely logical for their species.
Totally.
Because if you're a prey animal, I mean, there's I don't know the exact amount, but there's a shot of adrenaline that gets released in their system, and they can run, I think, a quarter mile. They can go from 0 to 40, in like a second, and then they've got enough juice for a quarter mile, and then they can turn around and say, reassess, do I still need to keep going? But that's a lot of juice, right? That's a lot of adrenaline. And if they don't need to run, it's still in there, and now they have to get rid of it and tone it down and try to get back to homeostasis, what I call getting back to zero. So if the human being shows up and says, everything's big, everything's exciting, we're basically just juicing them up. And if we haven't also had the equal opposite of creating zero, then when we leave, yeah, they can go roll, they can eat their hay, whatever. But if we put it in there, the human being might also need to help take it back out.
Got it.
And it seems like the smaller the horse, the faster they talk.
Often tends
so
to be.
Like, the processing time, and you can actually watch, you do a request. We have a thing called turn the key, come to me. And so basically you're like turning a key, like pointing first and then turning a key and then drawing it into your belly button. And you can be doing that on we call the go away face button, which is basically right at the ring of the halter. And you take 3 steps back, and then you just wait. And you see, do you see an ear flick? That's a response. And then you can keep waiting, and within a minute or so, depending on how quickly the horse talks, but they will come to you.
Right. Or they'll at least turn their head.
They will at least turn their head. Yeah.
If it's a really large horse, they might not have enough room. And so they might be looking at you saying, sure, I'll come, but could you back up a little more? I'm kind of a big boat here.
Yeah.
You need to give me some space to get to you. But this is what she's talking about, is there are postures, there are gestures, and the combination of postures, gestures, and then intentionality that comes from what are we looking at, how are our eyes working, what kind of breath are we doing? Those are then overarching signals. So we've often been taught that we shouldn't look horses in the eye. And that's not true, because they look each other in the eye all the time. So, when we were kids in school, we'd be passing notes, right? Looking, and I don't want the teacher to see that you're passing notes, right? So well, that's kind of how horses look at each other. So they're always making this like subversive eye contact. Like, Dad, I saw that. Do you know what's going on? I know what's going on. I'm going to go that way. So there's a lot of eye contact that they make, but it's for communication. So if we stare a horse in the eye with hard eyes, yes, that's intimidating. But if you blink at a horse, if you invite a horse, if you do the same eye messages with a horse that you would do with your friend or your partner or a kid, a child, if you do those same soft, inviting eye messages, horses love it.
Wow, I've never, ever pondered how I blink with my horses.
Right.
And if you're concentrating, then you tend to not blink because you're concentrating.
Totally.
You could be also gritting your jaw because you're thinking. And so then you kind of look like a biter, staring them down.
Saying, get over here.
Yeah. Why are you
Come here.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, well, you look like a biter.
Yeah, I'm going to stay over here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh, hey, that's amazing. Because I remember hearing, I think, I've been through the gamut, right? Like I did the hunter jumpers when I was a kid and what I call the get it done horsemanship. And then I went full on into Pirelli stuff for a time. And, I've been one of those where my horse is probably just like, oh my God, figure it out already kind of
You
thing.
went to another clinic.
Oh, another clinic. That cartoon, right? Where they're just like, this thing and this thing and this thing. So, I remember back to those days of like where you subvert your eyes and sort of be in this like submissive posture, and that will help, so, but I love how, this is all creating more and more nuance of like, okay, I don't have to like look at the ground the entire time I'm with my horses for them to not feel threatened by me.
Exactly. And the thing is that, and this blew my mind, when I started to catch on to this, I was like, oh boy, this has a lot of little segue hypotheses now that are brewing in the back of my mind. The fact is that we have these lips. We make words and our lips go blah, 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 right? Dogs and cats have fixed lips because they have fangs. So they can pant, they can do things, but pretty much their lips are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, horses also have movable lips, and they use them almost like an elephant uses their trunk. So they're quite movable and expressive. One of the autistic students I was working with one day said to me at the end of class, my favorite thing about class today is that I can see now that horses have faces. And I said, well, yeah, of course they have faces. And they said, no, you always say they have heads, but I see that they have faces. And I said, holy cow, he's completely correct. We call it a horse head. We don't even say it's a face. And I said, well, tell me, what's the most interesting thing on the horse's face to you? And he said, the chin. I said, the chin, really? Why the chin? He said, well, it's like a people chin. I can tell what a person's feelings are based on what their chin is doing, because he had trouble making eye contact.
Yeah.
So I said, no kidding. So I started looking at horse chins, and lo and behold, horse chins, horse lips, horse nostrils, then looking at human chins, lips, and you don't do the nostril flare, they do, but we have a little, and just putting all those pieces together, recognizing that they have so many expressions that are on par with our own.
Wow.
It's just that we have a hard time compressing their features and seeing a face, because when we're little kids, we draw a circle with two eyes and a mouth, right? Yeah. A little line for the nose. When a cat looks at you, that's what you see. Circle, two eyes, little line for the nose, and a mouth. Dog looking straight at you, same thing. Horse, no way. It looks like this weird lumpy thing. And if we look at the side of the head, we're looking at, well, there's the muzzle, there's an eye, and then up there's some ears, and they're doing. So it's hard for our brain to automatically take all that information and compress it into a face. But when you learn to do it, it's irrefutable.
Whoa. I'm sitting over here. I don't know if you see my mind blown face. We're on Zoom and I'm just like, I have never thought of horses as having a face. Like
yeah.
40 years old. Okay.
Some of the best lessons I got was from the classes I was teaching, was from my students.
Yeah.
Because they just said it like it is. And I would say, holy crap, you're right. I never thought of it that way. Let me go.
Totally.
Look at that. It was wonderful.
Totally.
So they do have faces. They have facial expression. They don't do the smiling grimace that we do, but they recognize when we're smiling, the smiling grimace that we make, because we go, our teeth stick out. They recognize that is not any kind of growl or anything, because the blood rushes to our face, our breathing pattern changes, our pupils dilate, we start nodding our head. One of the things that horses and humans have in common is head nodding.
Wow.
So when you're nodding your head, we nod our head to ask permission to get closer. We nod our head in agreement. Mm-hmm. We nod our head to release tension. We nod our head when we're having an aha moment. They also do the same thing for all the same reasons.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you watch your horse next time, like a lot of times they'll lower their head after doing something, they lower their head and then they'll start moving. So it's all pattern recognition, really, what HorseSpeak does bring to the folks who find it, it's just like you can start to see the conversations happening, and with the horses grazing from afar, watching they move on circles and arcs.
Oh yeah.
You start thinking, I can see a circle of where they would actually meet, but before they get there, they're actually, it's almost like chewing corn back and forth, and if they go more to the right, they can be taking a step toward the right.
Right.
Wow.
They're defining the edges of their bubble at all times, and they're letting everyone else know where they're about to be. So when they bring their nostrils across a space, that's the space that they're acknowledging and ready to step into. So if they bring their nostrils towards you, even across the grass, they're saying hi. And they're wondering, should we get together? So that's the moment to breathe back at them and say, yeah. And if you want to actually greet a horse, then rather than put your muzzle on their muzzle, which is not necessarily the safest thing in the world to do, they universally recognize, and I've done this with wild horses, so I can say they universally recognize, if you extend the back of your knuckle,
Yep.
they recognize that as an appropriate greeting.
Yep.
And we had everyone in our group visiting the wild tarpon in Germany, putting out their knuckles, and the wild tarpon were coming over and saying, well, human beings learned to say hello today. Look at that. That's interesting.
And isn't it funny that, like, I know I've always done, I not always, but that's what I naturally want to do.
Right.
As a greeting, because as an equine sport therapist, again, you have to develop rapport really quickly, right? So like you're doing body work on a horse, they don't know who you are from anything. It's like you have to develop that fast. And I noticed like that, the knuckles, that's what I'll do with every horse. Just, hey, how's it going?
Right.
Yeah.
You got it. And what you're saying is really cool, because a lot of the majority of people that I've met have said, oh, I always knew to do this, or I always knew to do that, something.
Yeah.
I always made this light contact on the girth area of my horse long before I ever saddled them.
Yep.
Things like that. And I think if you're successful with horses, you've picked up on some of it.
Yeah.
Their stuff. But then there's the horse world, which says, don't do that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right. So my voice was to give horses a voice and to say, yeah, there's a lot of these things that you always knew were true. Guess what? You were right.
I love that. And it's so interesting, even with the blinking, I'm thinking, I always ask permission before I start working on a horse. It's just one of those things. I feel like, if you're going to do body work, they should have a say in that. And I use blinking. I put my hand on their neck and I ask for a solid blink if they're comfortable with the work. And I give them a intention, like a focus and a picture of what I'll be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it works every time.
Right.
Blinking is thinking.
Blinking is thinking. And not only that, but literally the translation is, there's no need to fear. You don't have to stare. I'm with you. I'm blinking and I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
So horses have these literal translations. Like the other day, Laura was working. We had someone here that was training, and Laura was working with one of our more nervous horses, and our mentor horse was right there in the pen with them, and he was holding space for the nervous horse. So he's the mentor.
Wow. Yeah.
He was like, I've got you. And he touched his girth with his own muzzle. And this is interesting. They will touch their own body where they're trying to indicate a communication.
Yep.
If the more subtle thing isn't working. So he touched his own girth. And the nervous horse basically broke away and ran and put her nose right on his girth, which is a place that says, line up, be with me, you're okay. And as soon as she touched his girth with her nose, she just took a big breath and then came back to what they were doing with more comfort and security. Wow. And because we understand all that, Laura just said, oh yeah, sure, go. He's got you, let him. And now she came back, and then when Laura got her again, she said, let me touch your girth. And then the horse said, yeah, that's what I need. I need that communication right now, because it's the mommy button. It's the very first thing that brand new babies learn to follow is the girth button.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Threaded SWAT, fixing those bug bites.
She hates it. This horse hates SWAT.
No matter.
Oh, I think it must sting a lot, because my mare is the same.
Hates it, but needs it.
Needs it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Practicing, the best thing for SWAT I've found, especially on the ears, because they also really need it there, is using the back of your hand as the approach rather than palm on. Using the back of the hand, slide down the neck, and then kind of back of the hand toward the ear, flip it over and get the swat on there.
For the
but
ears.
building for the ears, but building enrichment with those uncomfortable places, back of the hand is definitely a great way to start.
Very cool. Okay. And you started to mention the mentor horse again, and I really want to, so this is one of the webinars that I saw for you, Sharon, speaking about sort of your understanding of horse personalities. So what you talk about as roles in the herd. And I remember watching that webinar going, just having aha after aha after aha around that. And so I'd love to, dive into that a little bit more here.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this comes from really sitting in the middle of a herd, which had four mares at the time, and one was a mother with a brand new baby who was born here, and then an acting stallion. He'd been a breeding stallion in a herd. He'd been a herd breeding stallion for the first 5 years of his life, and then he was sold off and gelded. And so by the time he got to me, he was 11, but he was still, the reason he got to me is he'd been bought and sold basically every year. Wow. Because he was still very steady, and he would fight with other males, and he tried to cover every mare he got, and he did it, and he just, he looked like this cute little pony, but he was not. So the poor guy just got shipped around. So when he got here, and we built up this nice little tribe together, I said, well, this is great, because he's a total gentleman. He's sweet as punch, but absolutely a mentor and a teacher. So his journey in life was to teach me how I could communicate with him better. So from there, I then said, okay, I really he demonstrated so many things that if I learned from him and then regurgitated it back at him, he was very clear to be like, yeah, good, you can pass this level now, and we can now do this together. And he was the type of horse that it did not matter if you gave him treats, if you had a whip, it didn't matter. If he said no, the answer was no. And he wasn't going to hurt anybody, and he wasn't going to buck you off, but there was a no in his soul, and you could feel it, right?
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't enough for me to have an obedient horse. I wanted to get in there. I wanted his heart, And so that was so meaningful for me that it made me change everything. So living with the herd, I was able then to start seeing, okay, well, it's not just a group of mares. They're actually holding completely different positions, especially because there's a baby who's vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother of the baby was still pretty much a baby herself. She'd been accidentally bred, and she was just turning 3 when she had that filly. So the other mares, there was a sentry, there was a protector, there was a teacher, and then there was that mare who was the mother. And then, of course, there's this little filly who, to this day, still kind of acts like a little filly. She's what I call a joker. And watching them take on these roles, and like, for instance, any of the horses might go, hark, what's that, right? What's that sound in the woods?
Mm-hmm.
But only the sentry made the decision, we should run or not. So the sentry horse, if the sentry horse said, ye gads, what's that? We should go, everyone left. But if the joker, when she got older, because she liked to say, can we get everyone going? I'd like to run around a little bit. She'd be like, what's that? What's that? What's that? She'd cry wolf all the time. And she got completely ignored, right? So it's the same message. The sentry message is the same message. But depending on the personality of the horse, it was ignored or it was listened to. So if the teacher horse, the one who loved to take on the filly and teach her things, so she'd take her away, give mom a break, go over here, and they would practice boundaries, or they would practice moving, or they would, she would do things. So if the teacher did sentry at something in the woods, she would do it and then look at the sentry horse. The sentry horse would then also look and decide if it's safe or not. And if she decided it was safe, they kept on playing and having a good time. So it's really fascinating to realize, holy cow, there's a system here, and there's a shared leadership. And like, one horse is really good at crossing water. That's the horse that goes first. One horse is a really good map maker. That's the horse that chooses the trail today. Another horse is an excellent protector. They come up behind or they flank to make sure I'll kick the coyotes if they show up. The weaker horses like to stay in the middle of the herd. So watching that happen, then I go back to the rescues. I've got hundreds of horses to experiment on, and looking at how are they doing it. And, you know, some horses rescues are quite damaged and have a lot of trauma. So then it came to me, could I act like a protector? Could I act like a sentry? If I did that, what would the effect be? And it turned out the effect was profound. So a horse that they couldn't catch, this one horse had been injured, and she'd been running around a field. No one could lay their hands on her. She was already traumatized when she got to the place, and now it's that much worse because she's severely injured. And they were actually, unfortunately, thinking of shooting her because the injury was pretty severe and no one could treat her.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing they wanted to do was chase her around and try to lasso her or something like that. So they asked, can you do something? And I said, I really don't know, but I'll try. So I acted like her sentry first. And then I took on the role of protector. And I finally took on the role of mentor. And within 20 minutes, I had her haltered.
Wow.
They were able to come and put a boot on her injury, the injured leg, hobble her over to the stable, which she was terrified of being in a box stall, terrified of it. So again, I acted as her sentry, her protector, and her mentor, and she let it go and went to sleep. And it's the first time ever that they had been able to keep her in a box stall, and she had to live in it for 6 weeks because of her injury.
Yeah.
So at that moment, I realized I've really stumbled onto something here because it required nothing but myself, just me breathing a certain way, holding my posture a certain way, and a couple of clear gestures. And that was it. That's all it needed.
Wow. I have so many questions.
One of our mottos is like, you are enough.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
you. That's it. You don't need any tools. And if you need something, maybe a twig.
Yeah. 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 Amazing. So, you know, to me, it's like, I guess my brain just gets going and like, okay, what are the differences? And I want to come back to this space too, because so many of us have taught that there is one leader to the herd, the alpha mare, this is how it is. And this just blows that out of the water.
Yeah, it totally does. And once people start to see it for what it is, it's completely logical. Like when you start to see the different roles, all of a sudden your world explodes. Yes, on one hand, but on another hand, it makes more sense out of what's going on in a healthy herd.
Totally. I mean, it's just like a healthy community. You're not going to have one person doing everything.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And in nature, a herd is a family group. So in nature, you have grandmothers and mothers and aunts. It's a lot more like an elephant tribe, you know? So there's this collective of thoughtful intention and raising the young with a lot of educational. So horses have to, this is something I've learned, baby horses have to have models for their learning. Watching these horses raise this baby and having them teach her different elements, and going from there to like an entire herd of fillies that was rescued, or colts and fillies that were rescued from some place, and they had no mothers and they were all, 4 months old. And yeah, you throw in a babysitter, we call them a babysitter, right? Well, watch what that quote unquote babysitter is doing. And then depending on what that babysitter's skill was, they may not have gotten some of the lessons that they really needed. There's not enough models.
Yep.
So horses, we know from science, we know that their brain, because they're changing, their body is growing for the growing years between 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 years old, depending on the breed. Their brain does not have the capacity to learn about their place in the herd, to really understand, to really start, for a horse, whatever a horse can comprehend, their comprehension, because the cerebellum takes over, because their need to survive and escape is more important than their need to understand anything.
And balance physically.
Right.
That's what they're focused on, is like, how do I balance this body as it continues to grow moment by moment?
And that's their key thing. So when you take a horse in for training and they're 2 years old, they're not even learning yet. They're just rote mechanic doing something, but they don't understand it, which is why so many people say, well, this horse I've been riding since they were 2 years old, and now they're 8, and all of a sudden I'm having all these problems. Well, yeah, they woke up, they arrived, they grew up, and they're saying, well, how did I get here?
What just happened?
Yeah, Exactly. And if they haven't had, right, some horses have wonderful, healthy herd that they get to move into and then they learn a lot. Or maybe they have the tendency to be a protector or a mentor. So for whatever reason, that horse has more capacity to learn and grow. But what if that horse is one of the types I call is a peanut butter and jelly because they just want to stick to somebody else.
Yep.
And that's how they find safety. And they never really get out of that. You can help them evolve. You can help them to flourish later in life. But what if you have a peanut butter and jelly who didn't have anything to stick to? That's a real problem.
And then you ask them to be a part of a therapy riding center or some kind of job that is like way
beyond them.
And that's why some horses are fantastic teachers for humans in that kind of capacity. And then there's others that don't, like, quote unquote, make grade. It's because they're their role in their herd.
Right.
So if you find that mentor, the teacher, that's their role in the herd, then they're going to be most of the time pretty fantastic in helping us be facilitators.
Yep. And you see that spectrum, right? Like I've been involved in a lot of equine facilitated wellness work and that sort of thing. And you get those powerhouses that are just like smack you in the face with wisdom, like, literally. And you're like, and then you get other horses that they're like, what am I doing here right now?
Please take me out of here.
I think something's being expected of me. And I just, it's a totally
myself, let alone you.
And it's interesting that you say that because I think what you're referring to and what I've experienced when you say powerhouse is a horse with presence.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's not this alpha dominant pushy negative thing.
No.
It's a nurturing,
empathic,
able to withstand emotional instability, able to navigate humans and horses alike. And that presence comes with a mentor, a protector.
Exactly.
That type of horse. So those horses, I think that they are born, but they also have to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that for what it is. However, I don't know if you experience this, but I certainly have. Often, you also have that type of mentor horse is a little bit slow, doesn't want to go too fast, and people sometimes they'll get on there and say, "Let's go, you got to go," and they take out the whip, and we got to go and go. Well, the mentor, if you think about the horse's worldview, a simplification is to think that horses live on a chessboard. So you put them out in a paddock, that's a chessboard. You take them out of that paddock, it's a new chessboard. You bring them into the arena, brand new chessboard. Every chessboard has to be examined, has to be secured. Bees, bears, and boogeymen in every new chessboard, right? So if the mentor horse has secured the environment, they will find a comfortable place to rest and they've got it.
Totally.
So if you move the mentor, the entire rest of the herd has to move around.
Oh my gosh, so it's like a constellation.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
Oh my gosh. That gives me goosebumps.
Yes. So if you have a mentor in a riding program and you're trying to get them to go and they don't want to go, they're saying, I'm the only anchor here. I'm keeping this together. Do you not understand?
Yes, and it's fantastic to watch, like, say 4 horses out with a mentor. So you have the one mentor and then 3 other Looney Tunes running around being crazy.
Yeah.
The mentor is going to stand still. His head is going to be at half mast, ears sideways, observing the monkey business going on. And then he will step in at some point when he feels like they need to simmer down now, and he'll go and do one thing, one gesture toward those guys and say, you need to stop now.
And they do.
And they do. And it's not chasing them. It's just usually one, even a flat back ear.
Yep.
In that direction. And that's the message. And they're like, yes, sir.
Yep.
We heard you.
Amazing. Amazing. I remember doing a constellation where you had to pick one person, and every time they moved, you had to move right across from them or something like that. It was a gong show. Yeah. There was about 18 of us out there or something. And we were running into each other, trying to keep, this particular distance from this human. And yeah, so I can only imagine with horses, this sense of, okay, guys, enough. Right. Wow.
I think it's fascinating when you can understand who you've got. You can certainly you can ask a mentor, could you please move? But what you have to say to them is, because I'll be the mentor now.
Yes. And I see that. So Diva, I wonder about as a mentor, my older mare, she's 21. So if I put someone on her that is not a confident rider, and she doesn't get ridden by very many people, but either not a confident rider or someone that thinks they know everything. Those are the two things. For those people, she will either stop or back up.
Mm-hmm.
She will not move. And I was blown away the other day. I put someone on her that I thought, this is going to be really interesting. And she's a very strong, like, leader, but in a very solid, healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And Diva, I've never seen her so content and happy to be ridden by another human other than me, like in her whole time with me, which has been 17 years. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like, I've never seen this before. And now that you say that, it just lands.
It totally does, because they will absolutely go and do anything.
Totally.
But they need to know that if you're on my back and you're telling me what to do with my body, you need to tell me that you've got it.
Totally. The only way she would move is if I was moving with her.
Right. Yes.
And if I wasn't, she was like, no, I'm standing right next to you. She would come and stand within 5 feet. She was not going away from me. So
traditional training would say, oh, that horse is acting out. That horse is being pushy, dominant, distant, any of those sorts of things. And I learned that stuff too. I was a hunter jumper. I did dressage, and then I got into Western pleasure and Western dressage and I've done a lot of stuff. And I learned all that stuff. I did that too. But when I really started to understand how horses are communicating with each other and what they're looking for from us and what their value system is, and I realized it's not that complicated, number one. And number two, if you just give them what they need, then they give you 110%.
Yeah.
Right?
So true. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the ones that I thought was so funny you talking about was the prince or the princess.
Yes. They're adorable.
They're adorable. I think we've all met this horse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They usually are beautiful, literally.
Oh yeah.
And they know it. Mm-hmm. And it's the type of horse that likes to go to a horse show, so everyone can go, oh, look at that horse. But they hate the work leading up to a horse show, and they don't want anything to do with it. But if they get to watch other horses, they're like, oh, I can so do better than that. And then they usually do. So it's this weird, annoying thing, because you're like, you're not actually fit. You're not actually in shape. How did you just pull that off? They're like, because I'm better.
And I'm amazing. Yeah, totally.
Right. Can we just go for a long trail ride now? Because that ring work is boring.
Totally. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yes, for sure. For sure. That's amazing. And then of course we've got the Joker, and that Joker energy, I think often misunderstood, right?
Yes. They're usually very insecure.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And they bite off more than they can chew all the time.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I was like, I can do it. And they get into it and they go, I can't do this at all. I'm leaving.
Completely.
Yeah. But they open doors. They figure out how to, they can open not only their door, they can open all the paddock gates, and now they can get to their, let everyone out. I knew one Joker that was so insidious about getting out all the time that his owner, because she was running a program, and this horse was just running free all the time and disrupting things. So she put him in a stall, and she actually tied him in a 3-legged hobble because he was just so insidious. And every day, she's walking by all day long, and he's like suspiciously quiet. And then all of a sudden, there he goes blasting off, and there goes all the other horses too. She's like, what the heck? How did he? There's the 3-legged hobble. He had untied it. It was in the corner of his stall, and he pooped on it. And he'd climbed out of the window of his stall because he had put his feet in his water bucket, in his food bucket, to climb over because she'd padlocked the stall door. And then he opened all the other doors like, nee, and took off. And he landed in someone's field like 10 miles away. And she went to that person who was loving this horse and said, do you want him? Because he likes you. You should just maybe stay here. And it was like that girl's dream. She's like, yes, I love him.
Oh my gosh.
He said, just never put him in a stall. Just don't bother.
No. Well, and it is that sense of, this is a way, I think, to find your, in a way, your kind of match as a horse too, because there's going to be humans that love having a Joker horse or a right? Like these types, these personalities in their lives, like they, right? It really works for them.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's fun when a joker, one of the things about them, one of their hallmarks is their bubble poppers. Like all horses love and need to have their bubbles respected. It's their number one value. Respect my bubble, except the joker, who doesn't believe in them at all. And not only do they
horse or human.
Nope.
Yep, they go up to the tractor, put their nose on it. What does this do? You know, they just are like, whatever it is, can I get in trouble with it? And that would be fun. So it's interesting working with them because you have to establish a boundary because they need it. It's like, yes, they're clowning and yes, they're having fun, but if they don't have a healthy boundary, they don't know their own limits.
Totally.
And the moment you can start establishing a healthy boundary with them, that includes fun, it includes a lot of affection, all that stuff, but it has to be a very clear and set boundary. They start to relax. And then they can put their attention on something more useful.
And the boundary is set by power of the pointy finger.
Yep, power of the pointy finger.
That's really it. That's all you need is your pointy at that go of a face button that I had mentioned earlier. There's definitely more nuances and such, like your palm.
You might have to do the powerful pointy finger 200 times.
Yeah,
a few times. Yeah,
they do get, and once they get it, it's like a light bulb goes off, and they say, "Oh, you can." So the values, I said, if you give them what they need. So jokers need to know that you're going to hold a line because they can't always tell that they've crossed the line and they don't always know their limitations and they do get in trouble.
Yep.
So when you say, I can hold the line for you, I'll tell you when enough is enough. Yep. They relax. That's what they need. And then all of a sudden they can blossom and become more than just, you know, the class clown.
Totally. Well, it's a safety piece, right? I imagine that, you know, they're like, I require someone because I can't draw this line for myself. So I need that. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But on the other hand, if you have a king or a queen and you're like, oh, I am so drawing the line with you. That horse is like, I don't think you even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I've met those horses. Yep.
Yes. Have this stately, it's not the prince or princess, they have a stately air. Now horses don't think in terms of monarchies, so they don't think I was born a princess. They don't actually have that conceptualization. We have it, and it's easy for us to use these terminologies and frame what the experience of that animal is like. However, that being said, that type of horse, the king or queen, they come across like a boom in your heart. There's just this, wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Yeah, I've met, I don't think you meet them very often.
Oh.
But I've met, I love my work in that way because I often get calls about very interesting horses, and every now and again I'll get one of those, and it just kind of blows you away a little bit. You're like, who is this horse?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you tried to do the mechanics that you would do with a joker with one of them, it's not going to work at all. So that's part of what we teach is not only what are the base mechanics of HorseSpeak, which is the postures, the gestures, and the signals, and not only what's the worldview, like seeing the world as a chessboard, and what are the thresholds like for them, and how do they manage it, and how do they check for bees and bears, and who's the checker, and who's the horse watching the checker, all that kind of stuff. Also, how can I gauge the horse I'm talking to? So if I could, we can start perhaps with 3 energy types. You know, like I will just say a stoic horse, there's a hesitant horse, and there's an outgoing horse. So you can start there, and that's pretty easy to determine. And then from there you can say, well, stoics also tend to be kings and queens or mentors. Right? And outgoing types tend to be jokers, prince, princess, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got an outgoing. So
And then the hesitants are like, we have the pawn or the peanut butter and jelly.
Yep, totally.
So it's a nice little framework to be able to, you know, make a distinction of where your horse may land in that.
Or even understanding, you may have a horse who's a king amongst all horses, but has had abuse, and with people is exhibiting traits that don't make sense. They're so afraid because they don't know how to relate to people.
Absolutely.
And then that's like, oh, well, I know this horse is a king, but with people, he's defensive and biting and driving because he doesn't know what else to do.
Yep.
So then your approach can match the horse that's in front of you.
Totally. Totally. That's often when I'm called out, is to do the trauma work.
Yeah.
You know, okay, let's bring them back to themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that trauma can, you know, really distort so much of that personality. From my experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
So one thing that horses have taught me, so as I've gone forward, anything I learn, I bring it to the horses.
Yep.
And I try it and I say, what do you guys think? Tell me. And they might tweak my body language. They might say, well, put your hand a little higher. All right, put it a little lower. All right, for instance, turn the key, come to me.
Yeah.
I always would do like an O posture for a draw, or maybe kind of like a come here posture. And then one day my horse was just staring at me going, can you just tweak that? Because it's just not right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'm trying different things. And when I made a turn the key motion and then drew my hand in, that he like ran over. So that was my horse's way of saying, that's the one. And I said, no kidding. Okay. Tried it with a whole bunch of other horses. All of the other horses that I met that next couple of weeks, they said, yeah, that's the one. That's the one we like.
And then you try it not doing the turnkey motion.
And they look at you.
Just like, no.
They go, that's not really it.
Oh my God, I am literally gonna run out after this podcast to try this out. I'm like bouncing in my seat right now.
Darling.
So one of the other horse-informed gestures has been what I call the hold hand, which is you just put your hand up as though you were waving hi to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relaxed shoulder and elbow, not stiff, and not cop-stop hand where everything is tense. It's just like if you're going to go hi like that, but you don't wait. You just rest your palm. And then you imagine that you have like a magic eyeball in the middle of your palm. And from there, you can literally scan every button of the horse while you stand still and back again. And this has proven to be incredibly useful for horses that have any trauma. Every horse likes it because it says, I see you, I witness you. I am just here to talk to you. You do not need to do anything for me. And they love it. You just stand still and you can't screw it up because you just stand still and put your palm from nose to tail and back to nose. Now, a horse with trauma, saying to them, I'm a compassionate witness. I'm right here. I see you. You don't have to do anything for me. We've had horses literally fall down.
Yeah. Huge.
And people are like, how can this be having this effect? This is so simple.
Yeah.
But it's a communication
that
they can understand. And then people have said to me, well, how do they understand it? Because they don't have palms. That's true. They do not have a palm, but they have a long head and neck.
Mm-hmm.
And what they'll do is aim a flat surface, like cheek or shoulder or flank, and they'll move carefully up and down around the bubble of another horse, showing a flat surface. So this is my flat surface.
That's beautiful. And I've seen that with like moms and babies and like where they'll do the sweep down the body with their head, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing.
Really
well, and the cool gift of HorseSpeak is that, like Sharon said earlier, like if you didn't have all certain levels of success with the horses, using your body language and all that, you wouldn't hang out with the horses. But the cool thing is that you can then bring all that, you know, just so happens the stuff is working, but it brings a consciousness to what you can be doing. So then you're like, what did I do yesterday that was so awesome and I had such a great day? It's like, oh, I did face, neck, shoulder, and I tapped the girth, and we did a scoop up with the reins, and we did all kinds of stuff, which is all the lingo that we've created with HorseSpeak so that it is very learnable.
Yeah.
And no matter how long you've been around the horses, you can glean so many different aspects that are going to bring great value to what you're doing with your horse already.
Right. And that's the cool part.
Yeah.
You know, that's the really cool part, because all I wanted to do was help horses have a voice. And they were my model. When I was a little kid, I was really sick. I was bedridden for most of my childhood. So I would look at horses from afar, but I couldn't touch, you know, because I was too sick.
Yeah.
And it was like the desire to be around them, you know, and then I finally got better medications and got it under control and was able to start riding horses. And then, you know, there's chains and whips and things.
Oh, yeah, everything.
Right? so I did it because I wanted to ride horses, but in my heart, it was not ever okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the path that got me there was really, I want them to have their own voice. That's what I could give back to them. I felt like they gave so much to me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And here we are at the end. We're nearing the end. And I said at the beginning that that our biggest challenge is going to be trying to fit everything in. And I think that we're very right. I feel that there's much more that I want to ask you. And I hope that we can look at doing this again and deepening this understanding, because I know I've had so many ahas just in this hour together. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we look forward to doing it again. You can find us at SharonWilsie.com, as well as we're offering a club. So you get $30 a month, and you get us in person every Tuesday for 2 hours, 2-hour Tuesdays. And we have our club members send in their own personal videos. So then we go over whether it's a herd dynamic or someone is working on their HorseSpeak with their horse, and we put them live on the audio with us. So it's a direct coaching call with them. It's a great time.
Wow.
We're having so
much.
That sounds really fun.
It is really fun.
We have a bunch of webinars and other courses, and we're starting up our next certification program coming up soon. So jump on SharonWilsie.com and you can find out all the information.
Fantastic. Thanks, Laura. And at www.wholehorse.ca, I will have all the links there as well as links to Sharon's books. So yeah, it'll be all there. If you are on iTunes or Spotify, you can head over there and find all of that. And yes, thank you both for tuning in today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
A lot of fun.
Wonderful. Thanks everybody for listening in. We'll see you next time for the Whole Horse Podcast. Hi everybody, Alexa here. I wanted to share with you that the registration page for the Whole Horse Apprenticeship starting September the 15th is up and ready to roll. And this is my main program, my fave program, my baby of sorts, and really distills all of the knowledge, amazing collaborations in my world, and ways that I work with horses all into one 6-month program. I love this program. I have a feeling you will as well. And I hope that you will consider joining us. You can head to www.alexalinton.com/apprenticeship-2020 to find out more. There's just 25 spots, and it would be great to have you there as one of the amazing participants. We already have about 10 spots filled, and loving the group so far. Really, really powerful group of individuals who are advocating for horses and moving forward in their work and their lives with horses. So message me if you have any questions. Look forward to hopefully seeing you there. Bye for now.